ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Welcome to Eyes and Teeth, the Christmas special, so I'm calling it Eyes and Tinsel. Taking part in talent shows is a nerve-wracking business. I've never been confident enough taking part, but I knew that the only way I would earn extra coins as a teenager was to go for it. From the age of 14 to 22, I would win W.H. Smith vouchers or cash prizes. And aged 21, I made £4,000 in 1 week in 3 talent show finals. All in all, I made about £10,000 over 5 years from talent shows, either in first, second or third place. I remember turning up to the heats and hearing in the room, "Oh no, we might as well go home, Steve the Puppet Man's here again." I would start to see brilliant singers at these shows as well, and dancers, but they were mainly singers and never a ventriloquist. I remember being beaten by Jade Evans to first place at the Austin Sports and Social Club in Birmingham in 1996. She was incredible and would steal the night with her Whitney or Celine Dion finales. And Michael Rowe, known for his soft Michael Jackson vocals and spoken voice, he was a great act. My last talent show was in 1997 at the Bournemouth Pavilion. I won 3 trophies: the Judge's Choice, Audience Vote and Best Speciality Act for a £400 cheque. In that final, the judges were the comedian Dave Lee and actress and singer Amanda Holden. I still have no idea if she remembers me from then, as 15 years later she was judging me again on Britain's Got Talent. Michael Rowe was also in this final in Bournemouth, as was Duncan Inglis, or as he's known now, Duncan James from Blue. I've seen Duncan James in loads of interviews and TV, and he's never mentioned that he was beat by a ventriloquist. After that talent show in Bournemouth, I handed in my notice at Urbis, a lighting manufacturer in Basingstoke, where I had been for 9 months. I took up professional ventriloquism and had my first run of holiday parks in Norfolk and Suffolk.
Oh, contributional.
Thinking back to the first ever competition I took part in, it was a fancy dress contest that my mum entered me for. I was 4 or 5 years old in Basingstoke at the Oakridge Club. My brother was Dave, he was 8 years old, and he was dressed as Wurzel Gummidge, which is ironic because he looks just like him these days. And my sister Karen, or Kazza, she was Aunt Sally with the bright red cheeks in her face. I won that day, first place as the Incredible Hulk. I remember it well, being painted green all over my body. My mum ripped my pyjamas. I won a £1 coin for that. And as it was like a fate, it had toy stalls. And I spent my £1 on a toy rubber centipede. Which is strange, as my centipede gag in my act today is still one of my favourites to tell. Who would have thought that centipede would be the focus of an anecdote for me 40 years later? TV talent shows were just a way into the business. In 1994, I was on Barrymore's My Kind of People. I was 17 years old. I didn't do very well, and they showed a few seconds of some of my puppets. Even my face didn't get on it. And then in 1995, I appeared on Pot of Gold with the late and brilliant Des O'Connor. I didn't do that great either. So 2 years later, I went big. Jonathan Ross was hosting, Gary Bushell was the resident critic, and I went for the big talent show. The year before me in 96, Paul Zerdin won it, so I thought, ventriloquists, they like ventriloquists. So I entered, and I didn't do very well on there either. But I did get my 3 minutes on the Jonathan Ross show. It certainly made me popular on the Haven circuit in the late 90s. Shortly after this aired, I was put forward for a daytime TV show starring Steve Allen, Nick Knowles, Esther McVeigh, Sonia Soul, Paul Roseby and Rodri Williams. They put on an afternoon talent show called Talent Spot, and I won the first prize, so I have won a TV talent show. 16 years later, I drummed up the courage to enter Britain's Got Talent, and it's the best experience of TV I've ever taken part in. I was 37. I was quite nervous on BGT, but I knew I had a great chance because they never really had many ventriloquists on the show. I went quite far in the end, ending up the wild card, and out of 11 acts in that final, finishing 4th place in the 2013 final. So my guest today and I have a few things in common, as you will hear in the next 45 minutes. Jon Courtenay, a remarkable talent and fantastic showman. Claridge's Hotel. Jon is the best of the best. Vice President of Crystal Cruises. Entertainer of the Year. Warner Hotels. I first met Jon on the cruise ships, and yes, who'd have thought a cruise ship cabaret star could win Britain's Got Talent, Simon Cowell? It's strange how Jon got further and further towards the final, and Simon decides to take the rest of the season off. Coincidence? Of course it was. He had an accident, so I wish you well, Simon. This podcast was recorded days after Jon won BGT, but a week before his Royal Variety spot, so it's a little warm-up and shows his excitement and preparation for the upcoming Royal Show, airing on ITV on December the 8th, 2020. I hope you enjoy hearing about his story from cruise ships to TV, and we kick off talking about his book, which has to be taken off the shelves during the live shows. I remember my time on the show, and I had to retract all my DVDs on sale and many YouTube clips from the web, as after the final it's basically a new start. At the end of the day, the nation were entertained, and in a year where it was needed the most. Please welcome my first Christmas guest on Eyes and Tinsel, Jon Courtenay.
Ho, 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 ho.
Mr. Hewlett himself, hello.
Good morning, Jon. You right, sir?
I'm very well, yeah.
Jon Courtenay is a British singer, guitarist and keyboard player, formerly in the rock band Pure Reason Revolution. He was also the songwriter on the first two albums. Outside of Pure Reason Revolution, Jon Courtenay is also involved in the DJ set All Bangers and No Mash under the pseudonym Cedo Simplex, and he's one member of the duo KC Blitz. Sorry, that is the wrong Jon Courtenay, isn't it? All right. Damn. Damn this Google. Jon Courtenay, 46, is a musical comedian from Mosley. Is it Mosley? Mosley
Mosley is how they say it when they live here, but I still say Mosley. But yeah, it's meant to be Mosley with a Z. I don't know why.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I'm from the south. Mosley, Manchester. I got it right.
Yeah.
He's a father of two boys and has and husband of one wife. I added that bit, and has been in showbiz all of his life. This is obviously from the Sun newspaper. Jon describes himself as a piano player and funny guy who writes songs, parodies, does stand-up and loves singing songs written years before I was born. Before wowing the crowds at BGT, Jon was performing gigs around the country and abroad, a.k.a. the world. That was the Sun newspaper. So is this true so far? Did they get it right? Because normally we don't believe what they say.
It's not far off. I'm a year older since they wrote that, but I think when they did that I probably was 46.
Okay.
But yeah, that's not far off. Yeah.
Thanks for being here on Eyes and Teeth. Looking forward to this because you've had a whirlwind year. But a few years ago, I read your autobiography, Shiphead. It's difficult to get that across on audio. Let me read out a few key notes on the back of your book, which I love. Yes, over 1,000 flights, 500 cruises, cocaine in Colombia, Spanish mafia, swimming with sharks, Caribbean brothels, airline upgrades, Lenny Kravitz in a steam room. This is stuff that I experienced after I did BGT, but you've done it way before you entered. How did this not get in the Sun newspaper, any of this?
I took the book off the sale immediately. I mean, there's so many people working on that show, and they are on everything. And you get the phone call saying, "Be aware that your social media is going to be trawled over by the press, and anything on there that you think might be twisted or anything that," which was amazing because I've been on Facebook since it started, pretty much.
Yeah,
obviously,
definitely.
never been a celebrity. I've always just used it for sharing stuff with friends and family.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm not one of these people that really goes on rants on social media, so I don't think there's anything out there.
Yeah, no skeletons.
And then somebody from BGT contacted me and said, "Is this your book that's available on Amazon?" I went, "Oh, crap. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So I immediately took that off Amazon, and then I found there was you can buy from another seller on Amazon. There was some guy selling a used copy of my book for £75.
You're kidding me.
On Amazon, yeah, and I was really tempted to buy it just to get it off there.
Wow.
That's all good.
I got mine free. Oh, bless. I can't believe you've got to buy your own. But that's just going to be part one, isn't it? You've got so much more to tell now since that book's come out. And how will you start the new book? It'll probably sell a few more this time round in Waterstones rather than the water-based venues.
I don't know. I mean, there isn't really any gossip that comes out of Britain's Got Talent. I'd love to say there was. I think your experience was pretty positive as well. I mean, I was almost expecting to be manipulated or coerced or to have directors and producers telling me that I should do this or that. And it didn't really happen like that. I mean, it was just the most positive experience. Everybody was lovely. I mean, I'm going to have to try and make up some sort of scandal and gossip to write a book because otherwise it's going to be really boring. It was just, I mean, I suppose as experiences go, to get the golden buzzer and then be the judge's choice and then to win it. I mean, that was pretty much the perfect Britain's Got Talent experience.
Incredible story, yeah. There's got to be something to tell, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the audition was back in January. Nobody knew what was coming.
No.
Yeah, I didn't even, people keep asking me, did you ever think you'd win? Did you think? I went, honestly, I know it sounds like it's an interview answer or whatever I said, but I didn't go into this as a competition. I went into it because I got the opportunity to perform at the Palladium. And that's
why I
wanted to do. I just wanted to walk onto that Palladium stage, and I thought, I've been out of the country for so long, performing on ships and doing whatever. Nobody's going to phone me up and say, "Do you want to be in a Palladium panto, or do you want to do a show at the Palladium?" Because nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, well, they might next year.
Yeah, maybe. So that's literally why I did it, and then it all just went a bit crazier than I ever thought it was going to. So.
Yeah, that was one of my reasons why I done the audition, because I had no cruises after Panto. I finished Panto with Craig Revel Horwood and Anne Widdicombe, and thought, well, how can I top that? I'll have a few months off. And then it was a lovely time. I loved it. Anyway, that was kudos. And then I had like 2 months off. I didn't take any cruises because we had little Lola. She was about six months old or something. So BGT phoned like they do every year, and then what swung it for me was that they said next week, London Palladium, you can choose any day you want to come and audition. And I thought,
that's pretty much what they said. Yeah.
Okay. I love the Palladium, so I did it. But I mean, when I joined the ships, which was like air tours in 2001, I first started to do longer contracts on cruises, and you were on air tours at that time. Were you an act?
Air tours, I was doing a comedy magic act. I think I did the piano a little bit at the end of the show, but it was. I started out doing comedy magic. When I was a kid, I got bought a magic set. I got bought a ventriloquist dummy and book on ventriloquism. An amazing dummy. I wish I found out. It was a Frankenstein dummy and fully articulated. Had everything: eyebrows, eyes. The whole thing was. And it was amazing. My mum and dad found it in an antique shop, and I think they paid about 15 quid for it. And it was the most incredible dummy that I got bought when I was about 8 years old, and I got bought the ventriloquism book from Davenport's in London at the time.
Brilliant.
For me, it was just, and then the magic set. It was because my mum and dad in the business. I just wanted to be on stage, and the piano was just something I'd done since I was 4 or 5 years old. It wasn't something that I thought was particularly special, whereas magic was something that I really worked at. I practiced sleight of hand, and I learned all the Bobo's coin book of magic and all this stuff, and I felt that was an art form much more than me playing the piano, which was something I always liken it to a kid learning a second language. If you're really young and you learn a second language, you don't think that's clever. That's just something that you do.
Yeah, sure.
And that was me in the piano, really, whereas magic was something I loved it and I really worked at. So, yeah, when I started professionally, when I left school at 18, I was working for almost 5-6 years just doing comedy magic.
So it wasn't piano-based at that time?
Not at all. No. It was just this sort of zany, off-the-wall... I used to... You and I are both good friends with Neil Austin, and
I love Neil. Yeah,
I worked with him at Warner's. I was the cocktail pianist at Warner's hotels, and Neil used to come and perform his show. And he was a huge. I wanted to be Neil. I wanted to be this zany, crazy, running around the stage doing this ridiculous comedy.
Yeah.
And going back further, obviously people like Tommy Cooper. I grew up watching him, so all that. It was always about comedy. I never wanted to be David Copperfield or Lance Burton. It was always about making people laugh.
Definitely. I mean, we grew up at the same time. You're 47, I'm 45. So like Paul Daniels, Tommy Cooper, and then Joe Pasquale came along, didn't he? So I mean, those inspirations really around about the same time. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you first started playing the piano, did you have any inspirations? It comes to mind with me is like Richard Claydon and Bobby Crush Liberace, or was it more of the funny ones like Victoria Wood, Dudley Moore, or Les Dawson, or even Tim Minchin these days? So
it was definitely the comedy. I mean, I do a talk. Sometimes I've done it on ships and on landing places called Funny People with Pianos.
Oh, wow.
But it starts talking about people like Bobby Crush and Liberace and who was the lady that inspired Elton John? I forgot her name.
Lily Savage.
No. Anybody listening to this will remember it. I can't remember it.
Oh, not Joyce Grenfell. No, she weren't piano, was she? No.
Winifred Atwell. There you go. Winifred Atwell.
Oh, okay.
She was. She Elton John says all the time that Winifred Atwell was a big inspiration, which is crazy because Winifred Atwell played this old pub piano, and it was all sort of pub vamping and sing-along stuff, and very dated now. But she was great. And Bobby, obviously, I'm still going strong. We've worked together a few times, and Liberace, obviously, the most famous piano player, Richard Clayman. But none of that was inspirational to me. I mean, it was always Les Dawson, Dudley Moore, Victoria Wood. Again, guys that were combining comedy with the piano, which is, I guess my show evolved out of the magic because the comedy stayed, because the magic was always a prop for the comedy, and now the piano is a prop for the comedy, really.
Yeah, wow.
Just because I'm too scared to do stand-up without using something else.
Yeah, well, I'm the same with a dummy, and I need something there on my right hand. So that's incredible. It's like a comfort blanket, isn't it, I guess? Eyes and teeth. Most entertainers hone their act for years and graft in holiday parks, comedy clubs, or whatever genre they're working. That was their story, Before you joined the cruise ships, where did you hone your act before you went onto the ships doing comedy magic? Was it talent competitions or social clubs, or?
Well, I was really lucky, actually. I mean, I know a lot of the older pros when I was younger sort of looked down on me a bit because I sort of dodged all the working men's clubs. They weren't really going as much by the time I left school. I left school in '91, and my mum and dad had moved to Cyprus to live in Cyprus, so I just went out there for a holiday to go and see them after doing my A-levels. And I got some gigs in hotels out there, just doing the hotel circuit in Cyprus. I used to sort of play cocktail piano in the lobbies of these hotels, and then in the evening I'd do my stage show, which was comedy magic. So I did that for about a year and a half, and then I came back to England and got a job at the Warner's hotels and travelled all around the country doing the Warners, which just wonderful venues, very easy venues, great, basically cruise ship audiences on land. I mean, that's what the Warners always were.
Yeah.
So I was sort of honing my act then because, again, I'd get booked to do cocktail piano sometimes, so that would be a separate thing, and then my comedy magic stuff would be as a visiting cabaret act. And then on the back of that, I got offered the QE2. I got a call from an agent saying the QE2 need a cocktail pianist in their pub for 10 days, just crossing the Atlantic and going around to LA.
I love that. I love that pub on the QE2. It was just, fish and chips.
The Golden Lion.
Yeah, fish and chips and the jazz afternoon was one of the greatest.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Owen used to come on there with his jazz band and do all that. I mean, my first response to that, the agent called me and said, the pub on the QE2, and I'd performed in a lot of pubs at that point, like we all had, especially with the piano. And my first response was, I don't want to do pubs anymore. And my agent said, John, it's not a pub, it's the QE2, and the most famous. So I went, all right, but it's only 10 days. Yeah. And, I want to go to New York. I'll give it a go. And it was amazing. That first transatlantic, we had Tommy Tune on, who is a huge Broadway star. Not really heard of in England, but he's a big star on Broadway. He was one of the acts. We had Neil Sedaka and Bill Cosby was on there.
Wow!
And of course, long before anybody knew what was going on there, at the time he was the biggest, most famous comedian in the world.
He was hugely respected by all comedians, around that time as well.
Hugely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a fall from grace he had. But so that was my first transatlantic. Neil Sedaka and Bill Cosby on the same crossing, and I thought that was normal. I thought that's just where these huge stars went.
That's fascinating.
To do a show, whatever. So
yeah, we
got to New York, and I'd been playing in this pub, and I'd had a really good time. I'd been doing my sort of show basically. I'd stand up and do a bit of stand up and a bit of comedy magic, and then play the piano. And by the time we got to New York, they said, we love what you do, the bar takings are great, do you want to stay on for the world cruise, which was 4 months around the world on the QE2.
Wow.
So I said, yeah. So I think on there I really sort of honed it. I still watch every single act because, as you know, Steve, you learn as much from the bad as you do from the good.
Yeah.
I mean,
still am.
We didn't have many bad acts on there, obviously, but there were a few that, were sort of struggling. Well,
I did get to do it eventually. Yeah.
So that was great. I got to travel, came home with in debt, I think, actually. I spent more than I earned because it was my first ever world cruise.
Yeah, well, you would.
And then just sort of fell in love with cruising and travelling. And then when I realised that, you could actually just go on for a few days and be a headline act and do a show rather than going on for 4 months, that was a game changer, really. So, yeah. Yeah,
the QE2 is my... I've done probably only about, nowhere as many as you, like 200 cruises, maybe 220. But... QE2 is my all-time favourite ship, and that Golden Lion, I played darts with Keith Deller. He taught me how to throw a proper dart because I was embarrassed at throwing it really badly. and sat up in the internet room sending an email to my wife while Richard Dreyfuss from Jaws was emailing, and his wife was teaching him how to use the email as well. The lecturers on there were incredible, weren't they?
Amazing. Do you know, I have a great Richard Dreyfuss story. I was on the Queen Mary 2, and Brian Price was the cruise director. And we were at the welcome aboard cocktail party, and I looked over at sort of the VIP area where sort of the Queen's Grill people sat, sort of thing. And I said to Brian, God, that guy over there looks just like Richard Dreyfuss. And Brian Price said, it is Richard Dreyfuss. And I said, nah, it's not. He just looks like him. And so the cruise director said, I bet you $100 it's Richard Dreyfuss. So some stupid reason I went, all right. Now, what was I thinking? Of course the cruise director would know if Richard Dreyfuss was on board the ship. So he said, well, you've got to go and ask him to win the money. So I went, right. So I walked up to him, and I got about 3 feet away. And as I got that close to him, I realised it actually was Richard Dreyfuss. So by now, he sort of made eye contact with me, and I was 3 feet away.
Wow.
And I mumbled something atrocious like, love your work, or hi, Mr. Dreyfuss. I can't remember what I said, and just sort of sheepishly went back to Brian Price, who was absolutely wetting himself with laughter. And he made me pay him $100. He owns a Ferrari, and you made me give him $100.
Wow, a bet's a bet, isn't it? But it was
Exactly,
Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I remember him talking about meeting the Queen when he done the premiere in London with Jaws. He was doing the lineup, and you sat here with these QE2 passengers, and he's talking about the Queen, and I may have to edit this or bleep it out, but I'm going to tell you what he said. But Richard Dreyfuss is doing his lecture, and he says, so I'm standing in line, and the Queen comes along, and I'm thinking, I don't know what to say. She's not my Queen. And he says this, and I just sit there and I watch the passengers gradually get up and walk out, and but I mean, he's a very powerful character off screen as well as on screen, isn't he? But he says it as it is. But I mean, it was incredible. I love his film. Third Encounters is just one of my favourites. When I first, I think, saw you or heard about you around the cruise industry, there were great entertainers on air tours, and I just remember the smell of air tours. When I was on there was Diane Cousins, Mike Doyle, Steve Rawlins, Al Brown, Dave Evans. They taught me so much watching them and earning standing ovations. But when did you start making that transition from seeing the audiences stand up after your performance? Because you can get great applause, great laughter, but getting a standing ovation, you have to earn it on cruise ships. You have to look great, you have to perform spot on, and you have to your act is honed. You can't let any nerves slip, can you, on a ship? You've mastered it. Last time I worked with you on a cruise ship, you got that standing ovation. So how did you mould your act into knowing what was going to work? Did it just come naturally?
Certainly, when the music came into the show, and I started moving away from sort of comedy magic. I mean, I always rate David Copperfield for making magic that theatrical, because before him, really, Paul Daniels was amazing, and you and I both grew up watching his shows. But again, people that moulded themselves on that sort of act, people wouldn't generally leap to their feet. And then all of a sudden you had Copperfield making it theatrical and emotional and using music as well as he did. And all of a sudden, magicians, obviously, a lot of people were copying him back in the 80s and stuff and trying to be him because they knew that this was a new thing. This was making magic theatrical. And I was never going to do that. I was always the Paul Daniels. I was always making people laugh and trying to be a bit cheeky.
Yeah.
But I think when the music came into the show, music obviously is a completely different emotion than just sort of making people giggle at magic tricks or go, oh, that was clever. All of a sudden to sit at a piano, and I think the first thing I put in the show was like this classical thing with a drum beat, so it was sort of up tempo, but it could show that I could play as well.
Okay.
And I think that was probably one of my first standing ovations when I put the piano in, and it took me completely by surprise. That was probably in Cyprus actually when I started doing that, and the response to the show changed, because I think I used to close my magic act with the guillotine, the head guillotine.
Okay.
And I'd sort of finish that, so there'd be a guy on stage, and then I'd sort of shout, thank you very much and good night. And you'd get this sort of polite applause, and that would be it. And then all of a sudden I was finishing with Rachmaninoff or whatever it was that ended this classical thing. I forget what it was, but it had this big da-da-da-dum ending, and then the track played me off stage, and it changed the whole sort of feeling of the show. People sort of leapt to their feet, and first time it happened, I was like, oh wow, this is a whole new thing. You know, it's an amazing feeling. And then doing the American ships, obviously you could come on stage and break wind, and some of them would leap to their feet, which was amazing. But the Brits, you know, you would have to fight a bit more to get the Brits to stand up, and you really feel like you've earned it if you get Brits on their feet. So
it's experience of watching these acts, and you know, how do they finish their act, and how do they get standard ovation, but what do they finish on, and that's more powerful than that ending. And when you're doing the ships, you've got to do at least 2 shows, so you need 2 beginnings, 2 middles, and two endings. If you want to get 2 standing ovations, you need to wow them twice. You can stick in New York, or any song that makes them stand up and, you know, start singing the national anthem.
I think the whole standing. I think there's too much emphasis put on the standing ovation. I mean, I've worked with acts that have come off stage and they've done a blinding show, but the audience hasn't stood up for whatever reason, and they've come off cross.
I've seen that as well.
Brits clapping their hands above their head is sort of the equivalent to an American standing ovation sometimes. Or you won't get any sort of whoops and woo and that sort of stuff from the Brits. But I don't really rate my show on whether they stand up or not. I mean, it's always lovely when it happens, because, you know, if they feel that's sort of the best that they can give you to sort of get to their feet. But I've had shows and walked off to sort of polite applause and felt that I've nailed it, and I've come off after a standing ovation and felt that I haven't done my best. So it's not really, you know, people that are judging their shows on the response, because we can all manipulate an audience to a certain extent, you know, by what you say and what you do, and we all know those age-old jokes about, you know, don't stand up for me, stand up for my son, who asked me how the show, you know. And I used to sort of clench my butt cheeks a little bit hearing that, because it was, and then, you know, starts to come on stage and say, hey, I stood them up tonight. I'm like, yeah, but you asked them to. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So yeah, I think for me it was sort of trying to find the arc of the show. It wasn't just the ending. It was all, because I had the music and the comedy and singing and stuff. I think if you're going to do a successful show, it needs that beginning, middle, and end. And how you start it is as important as how you finish it. And if you don't have that arc, it's the Les Mis theory that I like, that you've got these ups and downs. I've always been quite lucky that I've got comedy and music. So, you know, I do the song about my mum and dad in my show, and where you put that in the show can change the whole sense of the show, you know. And it's the master of the house in Les Mis. I mean, it's a great routine. It wouldn't be as funny or as effective if it wasn't bookended by such an emotional punch. People need that release after being emotionally dragged over the coals to laugh.
Yeah,
so you can do that in a show. You know, you can make people laugh, and then you can do something emotional. All of a sudden they'll go, oh wow, you know, that's really powerful because they've just been laughing. It's a weird thing to sort of try and nail that, you know. But I'm always working on it.
Oh, conversational.
I remember that cruise you were on with your mum. I think it was a Princess cruise that I worked with you, and we had a great week on there.
That was a great time, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched your show, and it was a mix of anecdotes, gags on the piano, parodies, great songs, but it was original. And even if the critics say you and I are old hat or end of the pier, you prove your skills of entertaining millions on TV recently. But on the cruise ships, the people loved you. They appreciated you because you were fresh. And on the TV, the judges were on your side because your material was apt. It was topical. BGT-friendly songs. It just won over the audience every time. Those 3 spots are important, aren't they, to nail it? You must be so proud of yourself, not only going on the show, but writing and performing your own ideas. It's a big risk.
I mean, that's what made it scary. I mean, one of the reasons that I'd never done it before is because every time, you know, as you say, the emails come through, hi, I'm a TV producer and I'd love to get you on a show. And, oh, hi, is this Britain's Got Talent by any chance? Yes, it is. Is that a problem? And they'd be all defensive. And I'd be like, no, it's not a problem. I said, firstly, I haven't got time to do it because I'm busy, you know, I'm working all over the place. I said, and I've got to support my family. And second of all, I don't know what I do. I don't know what I could take out of my show that would stand alone really for just sort of 3 or 4 minutes. So it was Jamie Allen. We were on a cruise together, and he hadn't seen my show for years. But I had a really good audience, and I came on stage, and he said, "John, why don't you do Britain's Got Talent?" Because he did BGT and America's Got Talent as well, and had a positive experience. Yeah. And I said, Jamie, I don't know what I'd do if I went on that show. I said, you've just seen my show. I said, what do I take out of that show that stands alone for 3 minutes? And he said, well, why don't you just write an original song about doing Britain's Got Talent? And you said it so simply, and I sort of laughed and went, oh yeah, because it's that easy. And then I went back to my room that night and just got a pen and paper, and I thought, well, if I was going to do that, what would I write? And I literally wrote it in about, I wrote the basic thing in about 20 minutes. It just poured out of me.
Brilliant.
I got quite excited, and I thought maybe I've got something here. Maybe I've got a chance to perform at the Palladium.
That's brilliant that Jamie Allen saw that in you. I mean, Jamie's a champion for all his mates, isn't he? It's really nice of him to see that in you and say, I had friends around the time saying you should do it. Some friends were saying you shouldn't do it. They've all got your back and they want you to do well, but some of them don't want you to put yourself in that position where it could ruin your career, because I made that decision and I just felt I was ready to do it, and you must have been ready as well. You were ready.
Yeah, there was another excuse that I used for a lot. I mean, back in the early days of BGT, Simon, for some reason, had it in for anybody that had worked on a cruise ship. He even used it as a put down on some of the shows. If an act wasn't very good, or there was some cheesy singer in a sequin coat singing New York, he'd say, well, you might be okay for a cruise ship, but you're not okay for... And for, that was my bread and butter for so long. So I thought, Christ, if I go on there and he says, now you're a cruise ship act. I mean, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. When was the last time he was on a ship and saw the level of talent that we're talking about, some of the performers that are on there? But I didn't want to take that risk. And I mentioned that to one of the producers when I sort of decided to do it. And I said, Simon's got this thing about... And he said, when's the last time you heard him say something like that? And I went, well, to be fair, he hasn't done it for a while. He said, it's been like 7 years, 8 years, because we realised that all the pro acts that we wanted to get on the show, or that were coming on and auditioning, often had come from the cruise ships. And somebody had a quiet word with Simon and said, stop dissing the cruise ships, because all these acts that you're loving recently, that's where they've sort of cut the cloth. That's where
exactly,
they've been practicing, really.
Yeah.
And it was true. He hadn't used it as an excuse. Still, saying that, I still didn't really. When you do the interview and stuff, it was a conscious choice. For I think Amanda said, how long have you been playing the piano for? I didn't mention cruises. I mean, it wasn't. I'm not ashamed of it, but at all. I absolutely loved my experience on the cruise ships, and it's certainly what made me who I am, show-wise. But I just thought, I'm not even going to give him a chance to raise his to roll his eyes or something, just in case that's where his head still is, So I didn't even mention it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it may still be the same result, but kind of great that he wasn't there for the live shows. I don't know. How do you feel about that? About him not being there? Do you think that was?
I think it still would have been nice. I mean, I actually liked what Ashley did. I think he did a good job.
Have you heard about his reaction about your result? Because he did love what you did in the audition.
I mean, obviously, at the audition pre-lockdown, there was lots of hugging going on, and we had a really lovely conversation on stage once the cameras had stopped rolling. He's an absolute pussycat. I mean, he honestly seemed that he loved what I did, and it was really great chatting to him. But no, I haven't heard from him at all. So it's one of the very strange things. I thought, well, at the very least, maybe his personal assistant would send me a message saying Simon says well done. But I've officially crossed him off my Christmas stuff list now. Heard from him at all.
It's strange, isn't it? No, 7 years later, I've not heard from him at all. I do hear from Dave Williams, actually. Dave really champions acts like ourselves, comedy acts, which is really good of him. And even Amanda, she really loves the variety side of it, which is nice. But when I was on the cruises, and yourself, obviously, we always pop into India or Barbados to try and get that unique suit made up, show business suits, and you showcase some really jazzy numbers on BGT. Where did you get those ones? Were they already yours, or did they take you shopping?
All provided by BGT. I mean, I sort of told them what I wanted. I mean, the audition was all mine. Obviously, that was just a jacket I bought for a few shows. And for the last, I don't know how many years, I was joining a ship, and the airline lost my suitcase, which is so rare, that hardly ever happens, does it, Steve? So I got on the ship, and I was wearing the black jeans and the black T-shirt that I travelled in, and a pair of white Converse, and I was on stage that night. So the ship lent me a white jacket from the gift shop, like a tuxedo jacket. And for the first time in my life, I went on stage in trainers wearing Converse. I mean, my dad had always instilled in me. I mean, Dad used to hate it if I didn't even wear a bow tie when I was a kid, because he always used to say Sinatra never went on stage without a bow tie, and that was his thing, a big Sinatra fan. So I've got videos of me as a kid wearing these huge velvet bow ties on stage that my dad had left me, and all of a sudden I was on stage in a pair of Converse, and it was weird. Every time I looked down at my feet and saw these Converse on, I felt good. I felt felt young and hip, and it put a new energy into my show. And I thought, wow, this is a thing, a smart jacket, black jeans, and a pair of Converse. And the black and white sort of really worked as well with the piano keys. And
it looks smart.
So for the last sort of 6 or 7 years, I've been wearing Converse on stage. So that was my look for the auditions anyway. And then the semis, they came to me and said, what do you want to wear? And I said, well, I wore my blue jacket for the auditions, but I normally wear black and white. And they'd already had this idea of making the stage quite monotone. They wanted it very simply lit with just a white light on a white piano and then projecting the pictures onto the top of the piano. So when I suggested black and white, they got me a very nice... actually, they had me a white jacket made that had all these words on it. We came up with this idea of having words like music and laughter and family and piano man all embroidered down one side of the jacket. And it's the coolest jacket.
That's a nice touch. Yeah.
And they had that made for me, and then I wore it for the rehearsals the day before we recorded. And one of the producers and the director said, no, we don't like the jacket. Even though they'd already seen it, they'd signed off on it, when they saw the picture.
Yeah, when they see it on camera, I think it's different. Yeah.
On camera, they said, no, we don't like it. So that was on the Friday before we recorded on the Saturday. So they had to send some runner into London to try and find another white jacket. And I think they got one from Mossbus or something. But I got to keep the funky one, so that's hanging in my wardrobe. I'll wear that for a few gigs. It's great.
Oh, wow.
And then somebody pointed out, I can't remember who it was, pointed out to me, do you realise that you wore red, white and blue for your three spots? I went, oh, yeah.
Was it unintentional? Oh, wow.
Completely by chance, yeah.
That's a nice touch. I remember on my final, we again, it was on the Friday and we went live on the Saturday. The costume, they said, we've made you something brilliant for Simon Cowell for the second spot for the final. And I came in and they've made him a bright green mankini on a puppet. This is I've got the photo somewhere. So they made this man just like Borat, and it's Simon Cowell in this mankini. He's got the puppet's actually got a bit of a bulge, which is quite funny in itself. But when they put this on, they brought it to me, and I laughed and I said, oh, "Yep, I'll do it. I'm happy to do that." The reaction would have been probably 50 times bigger than it was on the final, but I was happy with what happened. So they went to the producers, and the producers said, there's no way Simon's going to allow that to go out. And obviously it was nice that he doesn't get to see it until the show goes out, but they just said, there's no way. We're Simon's people and we're not letting that go ahead. And so they had to take that off. He said, okay. So they had to go shopping, and they bought this little like Barbados ski jet jacket, and then his swimming trunks, and they went with that because it looked a little bit better, and they give him a fake sunburn. But I mean, it is all last minute. It's scary, isn't it? Because it's like
so last minute. I mean, they asked me to change some lyrics on the day of the recording for the semis, because I had a line that said, "We've got no live audience for the semis, just you at home watching on TVs."
Wow.
And I'd run the song through once, and you know what it's like. They had a video of the song, they had audio of the song for months leading up to it, because we had such a long break between the auditions and the semis.
You had a longer one than I did. Yeah.
Yeah, way too long to overthink it and rewrite stuff. So yeah, literally, I'd run the first rehearsal on stage in the studio, and then we were about to do the second one, and one of the producers came up to me and said, the producers have asked if you could say, we've got a virtual audience for the semis, not we've got no live audience. And you think it's a tiny change, but when you've been practicing for months and months and months, and it's just in muscle memory, and I'm concentrating on playing the right notes on the piano and trying to get the words right, just having to change a few words at the last minute, that's all you're thinking about. It really, really messes with your head,
Yeah.
I was like, wow, come on, you've known about this for a while. You could have given me a heads up, not on the day. But apparently they do that all the time. We were about to record the Britain's Got Talent Christmas show, and it will be the same. I've written a song for that, and I sent it off to them, and it came back, and the producer said, I can't believe this, but Charlie, the CEO of BGT and all the other producers, love it, and they've got no notes. They don't want you to change a single thing. And I went,
brilliant.
That's unheard of. And he went, oh yeah, he said, that's not to say that they won't want to change it on the day of recording. At the moment, they don't want to change anything. I was like, yeah, I'll be prepared.
I remember you telling me just a few days before the final that you said there's no way they're going to change my material for the final spot. It's in your head. You're not changing, and you stuck to your guns, didn't you? You didn't change anything for the final song.
Yeah, I'd sent them I mean, there were some changes in production and stuff, but I sort of learned, because I think they can't tell you what to do and what not to do because it's a competition. There's all, unless it's something that's not broadcastable, then obviously they have to advise you. But when it comes to actual content of what you're performing, they can only suggest, because it's a competition, that they're not allowed to tell you to do something. And obviously with it normally being live, I mean, it was pre-recorded this year, but it was filmed as live. And I only found that out really after the sort of semis, and I went, oh, okay. And then they came to me and said, I wanted to stand up at the end of the song when that big flag came down. I said, I think it's important because nobody's seen me stand up yet. I just sit at the piano for I said, I think it's important, that big moment I should be standing, and then I'll come back to the piano to sit down for the quiet ending. And I put that to them. One of the producers said, they'd rather you stayed at the piano. It looks better framing and for the cameras. And I said, okay, well, can I say no? And the producer looked at me sort of like I sort of slapped and said, well, you can. And I went, okay, no, I'm going to stand up. And she went, okay then. I went, okay then. And that was that.
Wow.
I mean, when you're standing on that LH2 studio, it's one of I think it's the biggest one in the country. It's like a warehouse.
It's huge, isn't it?
You've got literally 200 crew on cameras and producers and notebooks and people running around and runners and then the director. It's very easy to be overwhelmed and sort of think I've got to do exactly as I'm told.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm sort of quite like that anyway. I'm not very confrontational, but I knew that was right for me for that part of the show, and I thought that they want what's best for the cameras. They're not entertainers; they're TV producers. They want what's best for the cameras. I want what's best for me and my performance. So yeah, I sort of put my foot down, and I was shaking when I did it, but I did it.
But you, like I say, you've worked out your ending. That's how you want to end the show. You know what works, and at the end of the day, you've got a new suit and new shoes you want to show off. So stand up and show them.
They made me give those shoes back,
No, I kept mine.
Yeah,
Was it Ben Sherman? I got my Ben Sherman shirt, my Ben Sherman shoes. Yeah.
Yeah, I kept the Converse from the semis.
Okay.
I kept all the other clothes, and then they said they were going to film this, like the piano was going to have red on it. And I said, oh, it'll look like a Christian Louboutin piano because the Christian Louboutin shoes have got that famous red sole. And the creative director said, yeah, that's what my inspiration was. Wow. So I said, well, then I think I should wear a pair of Christian Louboutins. You get these really funky trainers with spikes on them. And she went, yes, yes. So they bought me a pair of £900 Christian Louboutin trainers.
Nice.
Which is what I wore, and I was like, oh, these are amazing. And then literally an hour before we recorded, one of the runners came to me and said, costume have just told me they're going to need the shoes back afterwards.
Wow.
Are you kidding? So
You've just won. I mean,
I reckon one of the costume guys fancied them and got to keep them.
Do you know what? I think that's what happens. My shoes were about £280. They let me have them. They let me have the two trunks. I had two big Union Jack trunks for my dummies. They don't need them. They let me have them.
Exactly.
I still got my suit. I can't get in the suit anymore, but I've still got my suit from the final.
Bit of lockdown weight.
And a bit of it, blimey. Well, I'm the chef in the house, so that's gone pear-shaped, literally.
They did ask me if I wanted to keep the flag that was 30 feet by 15 feet big.
Well, you put it outside your house?
I was like, what am I going to do? Britain's town will be that we all carry on. I was like, what am I going to... And then Emma, my wife, said the other day, she said, why didn't you keep it? I said, what am I going to do with that? She went, I don't know, just a keepsake. I said, it's huge. It would cover the front of the house. But yeah, no, I didn't keep it. God, no, that probably just got thrown. I don't know.
Somebody made up a Union Jack Arthur's Army flag for me. Actually, I've still got it. It's just folded up in storage at the moment. But it's just a little memento because I didn't win anything, so it's nice to have something. I've still got the shoes. That's something.
Ho, 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 ho.
In a few weeks' time, you're going to be paying tribute to a fellow water rat and Royal Variety Performance TV star legend Les Dawson. Is that part of your act at the Royal Variety show coming up?
Yeah, I put a tweet out about it, didn't I, saying, proud to sort of give him a name check. And then one of the newspapers got hold of it and called me and said, we hear you're doing a tribute to Les Dawson. I went, no, it's not. Literally, it's a name check. I wrote what I wanted to do at the Royal Variety, which was based on the idea I had when I woke up the morning of the finals, which was true. I did wake up with the idea of the song. But then I thought, this is so overwhelming to be part of this show, and I've watched it since I was a kid. I do want to do a little name check to all the giants whose shoulders I'm standing on. Yeah. So I wrote a little verse which has got nothing to do with the actual song, but it does sort of set it up, and it just sort of says, I'm happy to be here, and these are the people who went before me, sort of thing. So yeah, just a little nod.
Mate, that's amazing. The water rats, yeah, he was a water rat, so they'll all be really proud that you're doing that and you're nodding to people in the business. You know what I mean? And the acts that have been there before you doing that. I mean, there was Victor Borg. Now
Victor Borg, yeah.
He's a genius, very funny pianist, isn't he? But he's done the Royal Variety Show. So you are like me. If I was on it, I'd be following in the footsteps of all those ventriloquists that have been on the show. But yourself, you've got Les Dawson that was on it. You've got Victor Borg and Dudley Moore. They've all done it before you. So it's an amazing thing. So for you to mention even just a little nod is a lovely thing to do. It just shows that you're a true pro. Now. A week after you do the Royal Variety Show, you're returning to the same venue, which is a 3,000-seater. You're not doing the Leighton Institute or Viva, which is the premier venue there, the cabaret venue, but you're going back to the Opera House. I've worked there on a magic convention once. It's huge. It's open. It's on sale. You're going to be back there a week later, but what a warm-up to do the Royal there first.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, warming up with the Royal Variety Show. It's not bad. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously being sold socially distanced. I think they're going to close the top balcony, so we're only looking at sort of 600 or 700 tickets. So it's not quite as daunting as trying to sell out the Opera House.
Okay.
I mean, I did some gigs in Blackpool when I was 18 years old, and it really was the home of British entertainment for so many years. Again, the history of that place and the pier shows and the summer seasons. So yeah, a huge thrill to go back and be doing that. And it did also occur to me that will be the first time that I'll have done my full stage show in about 9 months. So why not make it the Blackpool Opera House?
No pressure.
Nature's finest laxative. Oh my God.
Yeah, blimey. Oh, well done, mate. And I think if you return to Blackpool in the future, I done a show for Keith Harris, and we sold out a great venue, and I had so many artists on it.
That was such a great thing.
Yeah, and that was at Viva, and I can see you doing a week there, selling out a week at Blackpool Viva. They'd love to have you there, I'm sure. And they got the big screens behind you. So I mean, there's not many cabaret venues left, that were around in the 80s and 70s and 80s. So to utilize all the venues that we do have left. Now, would you return to your roots, which is cruising, or are you in for the are you in for the future, securing a reputation in the UK, like touring, hosting a TV show, or what would you want to get now from this? Once everything's okay again now, do you just want to do some theatre tours?
Yeah, well, we've got the tour next year going ahead. That's not happening until later now, because obviously all the tours that were happening this year are now happening in sort of the spring, and they've been pushed over to the spring and summer next year. But so I'll have a few sort of one-off shows during the year, but my actual tour is pretty much all of September and October. And I'm literally, I think it's almost every night up and down the country, which is going to be amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's a very weird thing, because I've been out of the UK for a long time, certainly not sort of keeping my name out there, and this has all happened, even though it was spread out over sort of 6 or 7 months. After the old joke, overnight success after 30 years in the business, it is quite overwhelming. And there's been talk of all kinds of things. I'm really excited. I mean, I would love to get back into acting. When I was a kid, before I went out to Cyprus, the plan was I was going to do drama school, because I'd done youth theatre, and I'd been told I was sort of, one to watch. I was the kid that was going to sort of, go on to be an actor, and I loved it. And I obviously my sort of career took off doing this, so that never happened. So it would be great to sort of, I mean, you look at sort of people like Shane Ritchie and Russ Abbott, for example. Russ, a hugely successful comedy show, TV show, and then got into the serious acting side of things. And I think it's Tim Minchin you mentioned earlier. I'm a huge Tim Minchin fan.
Yes.
Obviously, piano and comedy, but he's a great dramatic actor as well, and did Californication. He's just written and starred in Upright, which is an amazing series.
Yeah, we're waiting to see that. Yeah, looking forward to seeing that.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's so good. So, yeah, I mean, if this opens any doors like that would be absolutely amazing. I'll always have my show, and I'll always love doing my show with the piano, but I have been doing it for 30 years, so it would be great if this gave me the opportunity to explore some other things within this business. It's amazing.
Yeah. Would you be whacking any magic into the Opera House in a couple of weeks? get out the old guillotine.
I haven't got that anymore. I think, one of the things I loved about doing Comedy Magic was the audience participation, because it made every show different. I used to get people up on stage, and I'd have fun with them, and we'd do like cards across routine and chat with them. And even now in my show now, there's a lot of chat with the audience. If somebody comes in late, I have a song that I'll sing to them coming in, and I'll have a chat with them. And not making anybody look stupid, but it makes every show a bit more spontaneous. And I really miss that from getting the audience participation up. But of course now, we can't do the audience participation on stage anyway.
No. It's made it tricky for magicians. Wow.
Yeah.
So good luck with that, mate. And I'm really chuffed for you. It was brilliant. We were rooting for you and for Steve Royal to be top spot, and we were happy the industry were behind you. And when I was on, you know that the people that we know we've worked with for 20 years, they're just behind you, and we want a pro to do well. So for a pro to win, this is fantastic. So well done on that, mate.
Thanks, Steve. And it has been amazing. Just a shout out to all the pros, anybody who's listening to this. I've been legitimately overwhelmed by the support that's come from people that just people I've worked with sort of once or twice, and maybe we've had a beer after the show, and not public messages where they're tagging me, because you get that a bit. People saying, my best mate John is on. I don't actually know who you are. But there's been some private messages, people just messaging me quietly saying, good on you, mate, absolutely well deserved, all that sort of stuff. And it means the world, as you know, it feels amazing. It's great.
The Royal Variety Show, it creates stars, it used to make stars overnight, like Alan Stewart, Freddie Starr, Bobby Davro.
Oh, God, yeah.
So you've done the overnight success, but you've got it to come as well. This is your second overnight success. So we wish you all the best, mate. I can't wait to see it. We're really looking forward. And you don't need to be worried about there being no audience, because you've done it for the last 2 spots. So you're used to it now.
I'll tell you what, I know that Jason Manson, who's hosting, that's going to be a tough job. He's a stand-up. Like you've got your dummies, I've got my piano. But I think that even the guys that did stand up on BGT, that's got to be tough, because you lose all that sense of timing. You don't get that immediate response, that immediate laugh, and you can't look at somebody in the front row and have a quip or something. It really puts you on your back foot. And then, as Jason said, he said the hardest thing is he can't even go and try it out anywhere. There's nowhere open to go and run the material.
No, usually you do your warm-up gigs for the big arenas, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah. But,
wow.
He's a total pro. I'm really excited that he's hosting it, and the fact that he's in Northern and we're doing it in Blackpool, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun night.
It'll be fantastic. It's actually going to be recorded on the 29th of November, which is actually supposed to be the night of the Water Rats Ball with Dougie Brown, our King Rat. So instead, I think I'm going to be tuning in virtually, because you can do that now. So I may be watching you live before it goes out on proper telly, but good luck with it, mate. Well done, John.
Amazing.
And have a fantastic Christmas with your family.
You too, mate. Thanks for having me on the show. You've had some great people on here, and I think it's a great thing that you're doing. Keep it up, mate. Really good.
Thanks, mate. You got to keep sane, haven't you? And we're doing this thing really to stay in our headspace and be happy. But that's what we do. Yeah. Keep making them laugh. So I'd like to thank one more time Mr. Jon Courtenay. Thank you so much, John.
Cheers, Steve. All the best, mate.
Cheers, buddy.
Eyes and Teeth.
Well, this podcast was recorded a week before John's Royal Variety performance, and I have to say, I can't wait to see it again. On November 29th, I watched a fellow entertainer's dream come true, and I was truly excited and nervous for him. Jon Courtenay, winner of Britain's Got Talent 2020, has smashed it at this year's Royal Variety performance in Blackpool. He was refreshing, poignant, funny, and gifted with musicality skills, as well as paying tribute to some great artists that we remember. He nailed his performance, and I believe could be a show stealer.
Eyes and Teeth.
John's first UK tour kicks off in 2021 thanks to Gag Reflex and Green Fairy Productions from September to November. You can book tickets through his website, all uppercase joncourtenay.com, or Jon Courtenay on Facebook. Twitter handle @JonCourtenay. Bearing in mind, Courtenay is spelt Courtenay, because I gotta. Sorry. I hope you enjoyed edition 1 of Eyes and Tinsel, the Christmas version of Eyes and Teeth. I have another 11 guests coming up every other day. Today's comedy quote comes from Les Dawson. You do something you're really quite proud of, and the public doesn't like it. Then you do something that perhaps you're not at all happy with, and the public loves it. And that's the moment of truth, because it's the audience that's the final judge. Thanks so much to Jon Courtenay. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett. Vocals by Lola, Larissa and Nina Hewlett, plus special guest Rich T. Christmas jingles and Eyes and Tinsel theme tune produced and performed by the wonderful Kevin Dean. Tune in next time as I reveal my second guest on 12 podcasts of Christmas, aka Eyes and Tinsel.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!